Guys, sorry I can't be there today or tomorrow, but I wanted to make sure that I took some time to make sure that you guys got surplus, shortages, price floors, and price ceilings from yours truly. So some key terms I want to review with you guys, and this is in that note packet as well. Demand, the amount that consumers desire that they are willing to and their ability to purchase of a good or service. The law of demand, as price increases, quantity demanded decreases. This is an inverse relationship, meaning that if demand increases, price likely will decrease as well. Supply. Supply is the amount of a good or service that a producer is willing and able to produce given current circumstances. The law of supply states that as price increases, quantity supplied increases. Now, those two are different from each other, and it's important to note that think of supply as you are the supplier. If a higher price is being paid for a good, you're obviously going to want to produce more because your ultimate goal is profit. Okay. Whereas demand, you're the consumer. You don't want to buy things that are high priced if they can be sold or purchased for less. Equilibrium occurs when the quantity supplied equals the quantity demand. On our graphs, the supply curve and the demand curve will intersect at the equilibrium point. In shifts in supply and shifts in demand curve for reasons other than change in price. Remember that a change in price is just movement along the same line, whereas a shift is the creation of a new line. So review the last little thing that we did earlier this week to look at shifts in supply and shifts in demand to make sure that you guys have that all squared away. Surpluses and shortages are a little bit different. So a surplus and shortage means that the market's not automatically correcting itself. We could have X amount of parts for one thing and Y amount of parts for another thing, and the people don't want either one of them. We have a surplus of those parts. Or we can have, not enough parts for everybody to go around, and then we have a shortage. At times, this can be due to multiple issues, such as supply chain issues, like, for instance, when the tsunami hit Japan, Toyota was short parts to fix cars in the United States because their supply chain was not up and running. Or it could be due to consumer demand. For instance, last year's fashion items are not as in demand as this year's. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. A shortage occurs when the quantity demanded exceeds the amount supplied. A shortage will occur if the market price is below the market equilibrium price. A surplus is when the amount that is supplied exceeds the amount demanded. A surplus occurs if market prices are above the market equilibrium price. Corrective action must be taken to correct shortages and surpluses. Shortage, again, you guys can kind of see it on this graph here. If the equilibrium in this example is set at about $500 and the market price for computers is actually only $300, we will have a shortage. You guys can see that I put in a market price line there. All right, and in that market price line, what you guys will see is that it creates a new supply and a new demand. Okay, and those are represented by SN and DN. And that gap in between is actually the shortage, and I've labeled that. Another way to look at that with the same problem is just put a big box there. Okay, that is our shortage. We're not going to go into the detail of finding the area of the shortage to understand the absolute necessary or how great the shortage is, but for our purposes, that is the shortage. On the other hand, when we have a surplus, we have more than we need. So if the equilibrium price is around $500 and the market price for a computer is $759, we will have a surplus. That surplus is labeled in green here. You can see that the new supply is higher than the old supply, and the new demand is higher than the old supply. And that new gap there is that we have more supplied than the demand wants, and that creates our surplus, which can be represented this way as well. Okay, so when we look at this, we're looking at this surplus. It's that gap above equilibrium or that gap below equilibrium that causes our shortages and surpluses. So correcting a shortage or surplus, in order to fix it, a company or producer must take a few actions. For instance, you can have a sale. Think Walmart. All of a sudden, anything you want goes down in price. It's probably because they have too much. Or, at the end of a season in the fashion world, all of a sudden the clothes go on sale. Okay? For instance, winter fashion is on sale right now at the local mall because we are moving towards spring. I know it's hard to believe. We just got, 6 inches of snow today? or yesterday when you guys are watching this. So it's kind of difficult to kind of understand that. But, we are moving towards spring. You can also fix it by shifting the supply or demand curve to meet the new price. So maybe it's time to increase our production of something so that we can fix our shortage. Or maybe it's time to cut back on production to fix our surplus. Okay? Many times you're going to need a sale or a shift depending on what item you're working with. Up next, we're going to talk about price floors and price ceilings. And these are usually set by the government, and they have big impacts on everything that we do. Price floors and price ceilings help fix a surplus or a shortage in a sense, but also sometimes create surplus and shortage. It's when the government steps into our market. We live in the economic system of a mixed economy. In that mixed economy, our government gets involved. And when the government gets involved, what we see is we start to see the government saying, oh, well, this is too much for people, or that's not enough for farmers to survive, so we have to do something for them. And that's what we start to see. So if we lived in a traditional, it wouldn't really matter because we're subsistence anyways. The government has no say. If we lived in a command, well, the government will control everything. In the market economy, the government isn't really there, so it's not going to get involved. But in the mixed economy, the government gets involved when it feels like. A couple times that the government has gotten involved in the past. We tried to fix the economy. The government tried to fix the economy in both 1933 with the election of FDR, and then we see the government trying to fix the economy in 2009 when Barack Obama takes office after that Great Recession. Okay, we also see the government trying to fix gas prices in the mid 1970s, and it led to a large gas shortage. When the government steps in, sometimes they set a price floor or price ceiling, and that's going to cause a surplus or shortage, and I'm going to show you why. Okay, so a price floor is the minimum price that is allowed to be paid for an item or service. For example, a price floor has been set on labor in the country at $7.25 an hour. You guys can look at the map and kind of see maybe where you want to move to, who pays the absolute minimum and who pays more. You guys can see just to our west, Illinois pays $8.25 an hour, when Washington State pays $9.04 an hour. Don't forget that President Obama's currently got stuff on the table to raise that up to $10.10 an hour. We'll see where that goes. All right. Meanwhile, price ceiling is the maximum price that can be paid. An example of a price ceiling was in the 1970s when I talked about gas. So think of a price floor as like the bare minimum that you can charge for something. So the bare minimum that we can charge for labor in our country right now is $7.25 per hour worked. Whereas in the 50s, or not the 50s, excuse me, in the 70s, we set a price ceiling at about 50 cents a gallon, which caused a massive shortage of gasoline in the United States. Price floors and price ceilings are meant to manipulate the marketplace. The results will be similar to what happens in a shortage or surplus usually. Okay, I say usually because there are some instances where it doesn't occur that way. They're meant to protect people. The minimum wage protects workers. So instead of going to McDonald's and working for $3 an hour, you guys can make a semi-fair wage of $7.25 here in Indiana. And that's just when you sign up to work, you get that per hour you work. All right. Meanwhile, if we look back throughout history, we'll see wages for children and people under the age of 18 being so drastically low that we would pass laws to forbid children from working because it wasn't worth it. Other things that can happen are subsidies, and farmers are sometimes paid to grow certain items, and the market price for those items is much higher, but it prices those things out of the reach of many American families. So what the government does is they say, okay, we're going to pay you for the other half of that, but you should sell it at this price. This is the most you can sell it at. Okay, so that would be a price ceiling. If a price ceiling is above the market price, nothing's going to happen. And if the price floor is below the market price, nothing's going to happen. The only time events occur are when the ceiling is below the market price or the floor is above the market price. So there's some practice problems for you guys to work on, and I think I skipped over a couple of them already. But when we get to that taking corrective action, we're going to either need to lower the price or we're going to have to shift the supply or the demand. And I want you guys to practice this. For instance, if the government created a surplus, how do we bring it back into check? Well, we need to cut production or increase demand. So maybe we need to start an ad campaign like Got Milk to make people want to buy more milk because all of a sudden milk is this wonder drink. Okay, so when we're looking at this is kind of what I want you guys to look at. So there's going to be a short quiz. online, but I want you guys to practice first, and then I want you guys to take the quiz. So there's a couple practice problems for you guys to do where you guys are identifying that, and then I'm going to put a couple things up into the quiz, and you guys are going to take that quiz. Once we're done with that, you guys are good for the day. It's time to drop everything and read. I'll see you guys Monday.